And she walks in, and I just looked at her, I'm like, wow.
And he knew it was over.
I'm screwed.
Problems in certain parts of your brain tend to cause certain problems. If you hurt the back part of your brain, you're going to have trouble processing what you see. If you have problems in the front part of your brain, you're going to have problems with judgment, problems with impulse control, problems with attention span, organization. You are not going to be able to think before you do things. So you might do things that are really not in your own best interest.
I was up all night the night before doing drugs before I took my SATs, and I had to drive far to take them. And so I got a very low score. Not, you know, it wasn't like 500 or anything, but it wasn't good enough to get into a really good school.
Had I graduated on time and had I continued with college immediately after high school, you know, I feel that right now I would either be finishing school or I'd actually be starting the career that I want to do.
I wanted to go to like NYU, I wanted to move, and I wanted to be out on my own and everything.
Since using drugs, I haven't been able to accomplish very much of anything. I'm still working for barely more than minimum wage.
Boom, all gone. No money, in and out of hospitals, heroin just, it's gone. Dreams are dead.
If you have alcoholism in your family, or you have drug addiction in your family, you're at a much higher risk. When your brain is developing, this part is naturally warmer. It's naturally hotter. But if you do bad things to your brain, you're going to change how it functions as well. So it's always a combination. You know, we're born with certain tendencies. I have 3 children, and their biological grandfather had a very serious problem with alcohol. I mean, even to the point where he was abusing people in his family. I told all 3 kids, if you never drink, you'll never have a problem. If you drink, you might have a very serious problem, because people who have it in their family, when they drink, they actually like it a lot more than people who don't have the vulnerability in their family to it.
My dad was an alcoholic. He died when I was 12 years old of cirrhosis of the liver. Earlier, you know, he was a hippie and everything, and then he was dropping acid, shooting heroin in the 60s. The typical things, sold out in the 80s, became a businessman, ran an insurance company, coked out, drinking. That's why my mom and dad got divorced. Eventually it caught up to him, the alcohol, and he died.
I had friends who told me that every time they used drugs, it was a choice that time, that they could either choose to or to not use that, and that they could choose to stop at any time, and I never really believed that.
Once you get into the first one, it's on to the next one. Let's get a little more extreme.
I never believed that they could stop whenever they wanted to, mostly because whenever it came up, it was always a very dire need, very need-based.
At first, I didn't think I was running away from anything. I thought I was using it just because I enjoyed the effects that it gave me.
There was always something that pushed them to that, and it was things that were not going away every time they used it. So if nothing else, the same triggers were coming up over and over, and so that they would continue choosing to use, if that's really the choice that it was.
Whenever an instance would occur in my life, that the next thing I would do was go back to whatever drug I was using at the time. So then I could realize that, you know, it's not just because I want to use it, it's because I'm trying to hide from something, I'm trying to get away and forget something.
What we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to scan everybody's brain. We're going to take a picture of the activity levels, and what we're going to see is 3 things. Areas of your brain that work well, areas of your brain that are underactive, and areas of your brain that are overactive. And from that, we'll actually be able to see, is there damage? If there is, what's the level of damage? And we'll be able to come up with ideas on how to fix it, or how to optimize it so that you can have the best brain possible, because that correlates to the best life possible.
I'm just worried that my brain cells are gonna be gone and they're never coming back. So basically, I was smart, I had potential, and boom, it's all gone because I wanted to have a little bit of fun.
Whatever we see tomorrow is good news because you have what you have. Now, if there's something I can do or recommend to make it better, well, that's very exciting. And I want all of you to feel excited about the information.
I've seen a few pictures of the effects of certain drugs on your brain, but it only has that one particular drug. And I've used quite a few drugs, quite a bit. So I'm just wondering, you know, the result, the effects that it's had on my brain.
Now, if you've done something that hurts your brain, you absolutely want to know that, because if you've done it, you want to stop it. I mean, that's really the sign of intelligent life. New information, and now you can use that information to change your behavior. So if we see that tomorrow, we're going to get a plan to get it better.
Pacing in a tiny hotel room, wringing my hands thousands of miles away, I knew he was okay. I didn't know what extent had happened. And when they got back and called me, I had the mom fill me in on what they walked in on, and then Seth got on the phone.
I talked to my mom, and she basically hardly even talked to me.
I mean, at that point, what could be said? I was very upset. I said, Seth, we talked about this. I cannot believe you did this to me and to us and to your friends. You put everybody at risk.
I don't remember exactly what she said because I was pretty tired and I was pretty preoccupied with, oh my God, I just got caught. So I don't remember exactly what she said, but I know it wasn't a fun conversation, I can tell you that much.
Well, I was in for some more surprises. And that was the next day I spoke to a young gentleman that was staying with us. He was 20. And he thought I knew about Friday night.
She didn't even know about the one on Friday until one of my friends inadvertently told her about it. She was on the phone with him.
And he started talking. And I said, Friday night?
Yeah, Friday. And she was totally talking about Saturday. She's like, oh, tell me about Friday.
So then I had to call Seth back. And I said, now you tell me about Friday night. And he denied and was going around in circles. And I said, stop it, I already know.
That was not fun.
And I had given him excuses before this. Oh, it got out of hand, kids don't know. I was making, there were no more excuses after I found that out.
For the next month or so, my life was pretty much over.
So when I did get home, he came to greet me, you know, the usual hug, and I don't think I hugged him back, and that's very rare. I was livid, and I was hurt.
It was pretty scary. Like, I've never really been afraid of my mom, but she was mad.
And I walked in, and my beautiful tile floor was sticky like I have never known it.
The carpets had to be cleaned because there were some stains, and a couple sprinkler heads got broken.
There were bashes on the wall.
And the piping under the driveway started to leak.
I think, now nobody will collaborate with me on this, but I believe there was some pot smoking in the garage.
It was basically completely filled with smoke, like you could walk in there, you hardly see in front of you.
I'm like looking around my own home as if I didn't know what I was gonna find.
Total damage money-wise, it was...
Oh my gosh, I can't even think about that.
I lost my mom's trust, which was a bigger consequence than the punishments that I received, because after that she wouldn't go out of town for a while and she didn't really trust me, and I had had her trust for so long I didn't really know what it was like not to have it.
My greatest fear is that he doesn't relate to the seriousness of alcohol and drugs.
I know that some of those kids that were getting really wasted at my parties, I probably shouldn't have been assisting them in that, but I guess I didn't really think about it at the time.
I grew up with this in my home, and it hurt us. It changed us.
I know on her side we have alcoholism and diabetes in the family, and I know on my dad's side as well we have a little bit of alcoholism.
And I know genetically that my children come at this with a vulnerability. And so I would like them to recognize that seriousness.
She doesn't want that to happen to me. She doesn't want that to happen to my kids either, for me to become an alcoholic or something.
I mean, there's so many things where this could go, and I don't want to lose it.
It can make you die young, and I don't want to die young.
Well, what we look at in this study is how your brain works. And we look for three things: areas of your brain that work well, areas of your brain that are underactive, and areas of your brain that are overactive. Now, overall, your brain is really healthy. That's just an area that's a little bit underactive compared to what we would like to see. Now, there are probably a couple of explanations for that. The 3 or 4 cups of coffee you have a day. Caffeine constricts blood flow to the brain. Even though it sort of wakes you up and gives you more energy, that's not really great for your brain. So compared to some of the other brains, your brain is fabulous. When I talk to people who've done a fair amount of sports, their cerebellum's often great. So sports without brain injuries is really good for... See this red spot here at the top back? That's very cool. We find that is an area that actually goes with intelligence. I would be grateful for that. And actually, in many ways, just be grateful for your whole brain because it works wonderfully. I don't get to see brains usually that look this nice. Your brain really looks great. When you look at the brain from this, your very beautiful brain really turns out to be too active. So you can see why somebody would want to use alcohol or drugs as a way to settle it down. Now, there are better ways to do that.
How exactly would I go about calming it down so that I don't feel like I would have to drink to get rid of my sadness or worries or anxiety?
Exercise, changing your diet, using supplements. There's options besides drinking to calm it down, or using heroin to calm it down, or using downers, pain pills to calm it down. You can see that there's this little dent here. You don't want that dent there. Your brain sort of looks a little dehydrated. In your brain, sort of the mood and anxiety centers are really active. And this part of your brain, the brain's gear shifter, is really active. What was your sort of drug of choice?
Well, mostly marijuana or alcohol.
And about what marijuana and alcohol do?
Depressants.
They calm down brain
Yeah.
function. And so, you know, one could see why you would do it. The problem is it prematurely ages your brain. It makes it look sick.
10 years of drug use, and I just barely escaped. I feel kind of like I've been playing Russian roulette for 10 years, and somehow I just missed the chamber with the shell in it all those years because I could have really killed myself.
So your brain is the one on the top. And what we see in your brain is these are your temporal lobes. They're not working very hard. And the temporal lobes are very important because they're involved with memory. You can have problems learning, and you're at a part in your life where learning's really important. Learning a job, learning about relationships, learning how to manage your money, and so on. It sort of looks a little like a wrinkled sheet on top, and that's sort of some toxicity.
That's a lot of damage to be inflicting on yourself.
Compared to a healthy brain, it's not that good. Your brain is the one on the top.
Okay.
What we think of as a really healthy brain, the one on the bottom. It doesn't look good. Your temporal lobes, this is where learning, memory is. They're really underactive.
Okay.
Front part,
Yeah.
it's really underactive. I would think this is a 70-year-old's brain.
I didn't realize that there was that much damage.
So what I'm going to put on the bottom to compare to yours is someone who's abused methamphetamine for a number of years.
Oh, okay. That does
Okay.
make it.
Do you think the guy on the bottom is doing well in worker relationships?
I wouldn't say he's doing well on pretty much anything.
Not good.
Right.
He's actually been arrested 5 times. And compared to this one, yours is pretty healthy.
Yeah.
You keep using.
That's
Yours is going to look like this.
Right. I think I should have never have done any drugs, and I think that I will never do another drug.
Now is the time to take brain health seriously. So the real question is, which brain do you want?
Right.
I have everybody's brain, so I'm going to give you a copy of it.
Thank you.
Basically what we saw is the people who've yet never used drugs have had healthier brains. That makes sense. The exciting thing is even if you can see damage in your brain, like somebody took an ice cream scooper and scooped parts of it out, What we're looking at is how your brain functions. And if you can take the images and combine that with the decision, I need to take care of my brain. I need to think about my brain, love my brain, nurture it, then odds are over time you'll be at your potential. Let's talk just briefly about a couple of things you can do to keep your brain healthy. And this really applies to all of us. The first thing is protect your brain. The brain is very soft. Your skull is really hard. Do not put yourself at risk for brain injuries. You know, wear your seatbelts. Don't ride motorcycles. Wear your helmet if you're riding a bicycle. I mean, really think about protecting it. I tell people golf is good, tennis is terrific, table tennis is the world's best sport because it doesn't put you at risk for brain injury. In protecting the brain, avoid toxic substances. I mean, obviously, we've been talking about alcohol is toxic for the brain, as is marijuana, as is heroin and painkillers. LSD, ecstasy. Ecstasy is actually terrible for the brain because it depletes, means it gets rid of a certain neurotransmitter that helps people with their mood. And they feel better, and then they feel worse. Nicotine constricts blood flow to the brain. It actually prematurely ages your brain. And if we looked at your brain, I know you're smoking, it's older than you are, and you don't want an old brain. Caffeine. Caffeine constricts blood flow to the brain. Okay? Now, if you have a cup of coffee a day, that's not a big deal. But if you're having 6, your brain will prematurely age itself, and it will end up looking older than you are. Make sure you get enough sleep. People who are chronically sleep deprived have lower overall activity in their brain. And learn how to manage stress, like do deep breathing, meditation, because people who are chronically exposed to stress, we actually know it starts to kill cells in the memory centers of the brain. So deal with the stress in your life. The next thing to do is to eat healthy. How we eat in this country is a disaster. And even as teenagers and young adults, it's critical. You are what you eat. Lean protein, complex carbohydrates, that means more vegetables, and fruits, and get rid of the simple sugars in your life and a lot of the fat. And when they say supersize it at the fast food place, say no, because people who eat less actually live longer and their brains are better. Multiple vitamin every day. It's really healthy because we just don't have balanced diets. And if you take 100% multiple vitamins, actually a study from England where kids who did that on a regular basis, they did better in school. Why? They just had the nutrients they needed. Exercise. Physical exercise boosts blood flow to the brain. Does so many good things to your brain. Helps your heart work better so your heart can actually get good blood flow. And blood is what delivers oxygen and fuel to your brain. So exercise is just critical to keeping your brain healthy. And mental exercise. Even though you might not be in school, keep learning. Your brain actually grows with new learning, which also means turn off the television and stop playing as many video games because those things are really not very healthy for the brain. And don't believe every thought you have. All of us have thoughts that lie. Just because you have a thought doesn't mean it's real. It's just a thought. And if thoughts are lying to you, I call them ants, automatic negative thoughts, the thoughts that come in your mind automatically and ruin your day. If you don't correct them, you can get depressed or you can get anxious. And if you have issues with your brain, if it's working too hard, or if it's not working hard enough, you want to work to balance it because your brain is involved in everything you do. So what would you tell, Karthi, what would you tell 13-year-old who's like being a little bit pressured by his friends to start smoking pot? Oh, it won't hurt you. There's nothing the matter with it. What would you tell him?
I would say actually don't do anything, drugs or anything, because somebody else is doing it. You might think that you know everything. I thought I knew everything when I was a 13-year-old kid. You know, I thought I was smarter than the world. You're not.
If I had a friend who was about to start using drugs or alcohol, the first thing I would do was plead with them and tell them that, you know, that wasn't something that they had to do and there were other options, and I I'd have to inform them and I'd say, do you know what you're doing?
Who would have made a different decision if you had this information in 10th grade?
I think all of us would have made a different decision if we had this information earlier.
I've got information right now that shows me that, you know, escaping from your problems doesn't mean that you're not running into new ones. Just because you can escape your mom and dad for, you know, a night doesn't mean that you're going to be able to escape your brain, you know. You've got to live with it.
In my mid-teens, as I started setting goals for myself and making plans for what I wanted to do with my life, I always just had a subconscious realization that drugs and alcohol wouldn't help me get there.
In the long run, everything